Hey, horror fans, how's it going? Rhetorical question because you're not here to answer. But bored now, Rachel McDonald, the team back together again, and we are here to talk about the third in the Scream franchise as we continue to build into Scream 5. And so we're going to get into this one. This one came out in 2000, and Wes Craven directs, but it's a different screenwriter. That's important when Kevin Williamson didn't do this one. Is it something Kruger? His name is.
Yeah, I should have looked it up,
Weir.
but I think that's
something
it. Yeah,
Kruger,
something like that.
He's actually the screenwriter for Scream 3, so that might obviously impact on what we think about the movie.
Erin Kruger.
Quite
is
a
the name.
strange
Yeah.
name.
Is an odd name.
I'm sure intentionally they went with someone with the surname Kruger. That's probably quite meta in itself. Wes Craven, Nightmare on Elm Street. And actually say one memory I have of this film when it first came out is that I actually watched it on a double bill with American Psycho. So they because I mean, I don't mean a double bill as in they were programmed as a double bill. I just meant I went to the cinema and saw both of them on the same day. Because I remember they were released literally the same week, and the sequel comes out. You're looking forward to it, but yeah, I just remember that it was released the same day as American Psycho. So I remember going. Because there's something I used to do sometimes when I was younger, see two films in one day at the cinema, and that was a double bill. I had Scream 3, American Psycho, two very different films, it's worth saying. Yeah. But there you have it. So that's fond memories of that. And just to sum up the basic plot of this third Scream movie, again, to go very meta, they've now reached the point where the movie within the movie Stab is now to its third sequel, so Stab 3. A lot of this movie is sort of the filming of that sequel and the on-set stuff, and obviously the return of old Ghostface. So a lot of the stuff in this movie, because Neve Campbell isn't in this one as much, I think this is the least amount of screen time she has out of, and I think that's because she was recording another movie with her, is then she's starting to have memories stirring about her mother and the past, and so it's almost like them filming this movie is reminding her of that, bringing back those memories. But it's not just that it's her remembering, it's the fact that this time the killer, the one behind the Ghostface mask, is actively trying to remind her of that as well. And so you get a whole group of characters. Obviously, you get the returning characters, but you also get, because they're filming Stab 3, you also get these other versions of, you get the actors who are playing the real life characters, so to speak. So one of the running gags is that you get a Gale 2.0 played by Parker Posey, and so she's constantly following Gale Weathers about and just being a pain in the ass, trying to act like her all the time. And when things start happening and things start, developing, obviously it's almost like, her reaction is more sort of heightened, and it's more like she's reacting as Gale might sort of react, and sort of it's almost like at one point she's getting into like a fight with Dewey, because that's almost like what Gale might do. And so you've got Jenny McCarthy, who has a small role. You have Emily Mortimer, who's like the Sydney, the actress playing Sydney in Stab 3. It's a bit like a Dreamcast in many ways, this film, of independent actors. You think of this time, Mortimer, Parker Posey, various. You've got David Woolburn, who people will know from various things. You've got Patrick Dempsey as like the detective, as like the cop who's investigating. Obviously, Gale's involved again. She's involved involved in the investigation. Scream 2, it's the wrong movie, but I didn't have it on
Still
me last
Scream.
time. Scream 2, Stab Glass, they have it.
Very
Ghostface
cool.
I do love this. I've had this for years. Yeah, there. So I'm gonna have a drink because it's
Cheers.
late at night. Yeah, cheers. Thank you. And
I'm
I
not
might
joining
need.
because it's only 12 o'clock in the afternoon here, so
I might need it for this review, and I'll let you try to defend this garbage film.
Oh no! Don't talk smack about
Okay.
my beloved Scream 3.
I've just given away what I think, so
Yeah, well, okay, so it's my turn to give away what I think. So
just give up. Yeah.
Keith and I are going to have beef about this film. I'm already ready for it. Because I love Scream 3. I have always loved Scream 3. It's actually my favorite of the sequels, and I always have so much fun watching this film. Yes, because it is just okay. So here's my first defense. Okay, so we talked about with Scream 2 that there was a bit of a tonal issue with Scream 2 in that half of it was trying to be almost like a college comedy, and then half of it was trying to be like a serious like Scream 2 slasher film. The thing I love about Scream 3 is that it doesn't try to pretend to be a serious film. Like, it knows that it's not a good film, and it just kind of wholeheartedly embraces that and just kind of has fun with it. So I always feel when I'm watching this movie, no one's taking themselves seriously, not even like the main characters. Like, we all know that we're making, it's like I mentioned in our Scream 2 review, and I actually said the wrong thing. I said this movie was made post 9/11. It obviously wasn't. What I meant to say was it was made post
I did
Columbine.
mean to correct you. That.
Yeah. No, I meant to say that it was post Columbine. So obviously, school shootings are so commonplace now these days in America. We don't bat an eye. But when Columbine happened, that was a huge deal. Like, Columbine happened, America was shocked, the world was shocked, and of course, entertainment and the movie industry kind of went, oh shit, like, did we cause Columbine? There was all that hoo-ha about violence in the movies, translating to real life, et cetera, which caused a little bit of a panic in the industry. And in the horror industry, that meant that we actually got quite a few movies that were very, very light on gore and blood and splatter. And Scream 3, unfortunately, was made in this period. So I feel like they kind of knew with Scream 3 that they couldn't do the same thing they did in the first two. So they kind of went, okay, let's make this a horror comedy instead of a horror film. And they just kind of lean into that. So first of all, I love Sidney Prescott. We all know I love Sidney Prescott, but I kind of love that Gail gets to be the main character in this film. Like, she's kind of pushed to the forefront and she's kind of the focal character. And it's kind of nice seeing her get to be like the actual main driving force behind everything that's happening in the movie. She's doing the investigation, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I think that's probably an accident, though, isn't it? Because obviously they didn't have Nev Campbell for a lot of time.
But it ended up working out in their favor. I did notice, though, that even though they don't have Nev Campbell that often, now I think the film she was filming was Drowning Mona. So, yeah, there were like scheduling conflicts, but they utilize her very well. She feels like she's in the film a lot more than she actually is, because, you know, we see her at the beginning, then we see little scenes here and there, and then she obviously turns up at the end. But Sydney taking the back seat does mean that Gail gets to shine a little bit more, and she has some great scenes, like some really fantastic scenes. There's a great scene where she sneaks onto the set of Scream 3 and she has a camera in her bag that has holes in it. And Dewey makes some comments about like, oh, look at Gail here with a camera. And she's like, do you see a camera here? And then she's like, oh, right, you bought me this purse, didn't you? It's like, because he knows that, you know, she's got the camera hidden in there. I love Parker Posey. Like, you put Parker Posey in any movie in the early 2000s and you've got pure gold. And her playing like a little mini Gail Weathers, I just love the way she follows her around, the way that she's like involved with Dewey, because, you know, that's what Gail was. I think every scene that Parker Posey is in is just pure comedy gold, and she just elevates the movie so much. And I just really love, I feel like Scream 3 brings back that kind of murder mystery aspect that is missing from Scream 2. Like in Scream 1, we talked about how it kind of is a bit of a murder mystery. This one is too, because they're all trying to figure out, like, what is the big mystery surrounding Maureen Prescott? Why is the killer so focused on her? I love Randy's little cameo where he pops up to give us the rules of a trilogy. I think that was a great way to get him into the movie. And I just love how much fun they're having with this movie. Like, nothing is being taken seriously. Everything is just ridiculous and heightened, and they all just kind of lean into it. It's just so much fun. You are not agreeing with me at all.
Well, first of all, I can't believe as I'm drinking and getting a little drunk here, you're bringing up serious points about Columbine and that. I mean, that sort of thrown me off. But I know what you mean, because they did a similar thing around after, like, post 9/11, where they were pushing films back because they thought it might seem insensitive. But so I do know what you mean. Yeah, okay. I think whether some of that is intentional, I don't know, because like you're talking about them having fun and it being humor. I mean, to me, the murder mystery aspect is always part of the Scream movies anyway, and we can talk about if we. I think the sort of reveal and the twist is crap, basically, and the motivation, and I just think it's so lazy, and that's the problem with this film, is it's such a lazy script, and a lot of the comedy I don't find funny anyway, so I don't have a good time. There are moments, I agree, that Parker Posey might be the highlight, and that kind of makes sense, because you do feel, if you're going to get someone to play Gail Weathers, Parker Posey, she seems like the perfect candidate, and she's a great actress. She gets some really, I mean, there's lots of that stuff that I find annoying as well, just because a lot of this movie is like one note type gags, and a lot of it is just people running around screaming, and it gets so repetitive, and the idea, but it's just a mess. When you watch the film, it is actively a mess. And I know we pick certain holes in Scream 2, but I wouldn't necessarily say Scream 2 was a mess, or certainly not in the way this movie is. And I mean, okay, Parker Posey is quite entertaining. I'll give you that side. I think some of the better stuff is with her and Gail. I do get the sense for the first time that these main characters are going through the motions a bit, and that maybe I guess they're still solid because they're good actors at the end of the day. So when I'm watching Sydney, she's still, I still feel like Neve Campbell is doing a solid enough job. I just feel like she's a little bit, it's the third Scream movie. Is my heart still in this kind of thing? And obviously the fact that she was doing another movie as well maybe means that she wasn't completely committed to this one. But I just get the sense when I watch scenes with Gail and Dewey, I think Cox out of the two comes out a bit better, but I do feel like Arquette is going through the motions a bit more in this movie. Like maybe he's just whatever, doesn't want to be there or whatever. The chemistry's still there, but I just feel like there's not quite the same energy, and they're not quite hitting their marks like they have in the other movies. But Parker Posey, as I said, and it is a good cast, which is what makes the movie even more infuriating, because characters just get whittled away like nothing. I mean, Cotton Weary briefly appears. We can talk about the opening in a minute, but he gets killed off very quickly. Again, maybe the actor didn't want to be in it, and that might be why they writ his sort of exit, but he's sort of wasted. Patrick Woolburn, who I like as an actor as well, I think he's the bodyguard. I never quite figured out what character he is. I think he's the one. He's been in like the Spy Kids movies. He's been in like...
He's Kronk from The Emperor's New Groove. That's how I know.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's how you know. He's one of those. He's a character-style actor, so you're probably gonna. I mean, a lot of Seinfeld fans would know him because he had a recurring role on that, and he's also in the series of Unfortunate Events TV show.
Oh,
so,
he is too, isn't he?
like the
Yeah.
storyteller. So he pops up in a lot. But yeah, he's not given much to do. He's sort of like wasted. Emily Mortimer, who I like as an actress, she's wasted. I think she has like one good scene with Sydney in the bathroom, which is not a bad scene, but apart from that, she's wasted. The kills are rubbish. There's nothing really to
The kills are not great.
the kills are stupid.
That one can at least be blamed on the post-Columbine hysteria. Like, it was deliberately toned down because this film was not allowed to be as violent as the other two. So it at least has an excuse for the crap kills. Like, it just wasn't allowed to be as intense as the other two were in the post-Columbine era.
He had to blows himself up because that's the low point of the whole franchise.
Oh man, I love that scene. Oh, Parker Posey in that scene is brilliant. So good.
Well, she might be brilliant, but the scene itself isn't. But there's just so much stuff. I just think this is really lazy, and it just lacks suspense. And yeah, it's just lazy, and I don't like the twist, and I don't like the motive, because that just feels like recycled as well. And I just think overall there's so much in this film that doesn't add up. Like, it doesn't really make sense. So I'll give you a basic example, and it's to do with the premise of this movie. And it's the premise. Now, obviously, the other cast members, the other main characters, it makes a bit more sense because there's like a storyline reason for them to be there, sort of thing. They sort of, I mean, there's a lot of credibility issues because would they really be involved in this production? I mean, why would they have any interest with being involved in the production? But whatever, there's a storyline reason for them to be there in most cases. I mean, there's so many holes. There's the fact that Gail Weathers, for some reason, is allowed to actually work with the police. I mean, why? I mean, I understand history, but they weren't working with her in the first. Well, they sort of were, but only because Dewey allowed it. But it's almost like in Scream 2, she wasn't officially working with the police. It's like, how has she suddenly become more important from Scream 2 to Scream 3, where the police are now... I mean, it's this one detective in particular who's allowing her to work with him. But anyway, we can come back to that. But to get back to my point, it makes no sense that Sydney would actively keep going back to this movie set and pursue this. She would be like, no, that's my past. That's a terrible past. I don't want anything to do with that shit. I want to move on with my life. And that's it. I'm not going to that set. There's no reason for me to go to that set. If I don't go to the set, I'm probably safe. I'm not going to get killed by the killer on that set. And I'm not going to have all those terrible memories. And I hate all the stupid voiceovers and just stupid memories from, and the stuff with her mother. I don't like the storyline, and I'll say that now because that's a big part of it. I just think, why can't we have a Scream where it doesn't have to be something personal, like to Sydney, like the motivation, I made up a word there, motivation. but why can't we? Because it's the third film now. It's this Scream 3. So why can't we just come up with a new motive for the killer? And actually, that's another thing we're going to get to, because they do actually retcon a different killer of her mother in the original. They retcon, and that's bollocks. That's absolutely bollocks. That's terrible. That's a terrible idea, because we covered the first film. Stu and Billy did it. They had reasons to do it, and it works.
Calls her. So we see Sydney. So Sydney in this movie kind of follows on from her characterization in the second movie, where she is starting to, like, she's basically in hiding. So she's gotten to the point where she's realized that these guys are going to keep coming after her. So she's living somewhere in the hills in California under a pseudonym. She works from home. Only her dad and Dewey know where she is, which I love that little touch that when you see her work phone, you see that the numbers are dad and then Dewey. Like, they're the only two people that she keeps in touch with. And I love that she still keeps in touch with Dewey. So she is, living her little hermit life. And then she gets that phone call where the killer actually calls her. So she knows that he knows where she is. Like, he's found her. And that was the whole point of her hiding, was so that the killer wouldn't find her. So it's like she says to Dewey actually says to her, "Why did you come here?" And she says, "Well, he called me at home. I'm no safer there than I am here." And at least here, she has friends. She's got people that she can surround herself with. So that's her reasoning for coming down off the mountain, is the killer found her anyway. So is she better up there alone by herself, or is she better with Dewey and Gail, where they can actually figure out what's going on and, actually work together so she's not alone? I think the whole point of Sydney's arc is to show that she's not alone. Scream 3, I remember not liking it that much because I thought, this is stupid, it's goofy, it doesn't fit the first two. It was only upon rewatches that I came to appreciate it because, like I said, I think for starters, I think, like you said, there is some stuff that was probably accidental, like Gail being more of a main character than Sydney. That was because they couldn't get Nev Campbell, things like that, I understand. But I do think that I will admit, I don't think the script is anywhere near as good as the script in the first, even the second film. Like, it's definitely a blunter script. It doesn't have that kind of finesse that Kevin Williamson's scripts have, that kind of really subtle, satirical thing. This one's a bit more blunt in its approach. I do think that this has the worst opening scene of any Scream movie. I think that opening scene with Cotton Weary and his girlfriend is just dull and stupid and doesn't really, it feels, there's no menace in it. Like, there's absolutely no menace in it. There's no menace in the kills. One thing I do hate about this movie that I think is stupid but kind of works with the heightened reality of the movie is the fact that the killer has all of their voices stored on this device where apparently he can sound like any of them. That's dumb. I will admit that part was stupid. So the opening scene, not great. But I think with this movie is they realized, like I said, because it was post-Columbine, they realized that they wouldn't be able to make the same sort of film that they did for the first two. They probably went, okay, we can't do a full-on slasher film. What are we going to do instead? And so instead they went, okay, let's do a horror comedy. And if you view the film as a horror comedy and not as a serious slasher, it's a lot more fun because you can just kind of lean into the comedy and just kind of enjoy it as like another Tucker and Dale vs. Evil or Club Dread or Shaun of the Dead or something like that. It's more light. Now, when it comes to the backstory and the reasoning and all the revelations we get, I completely understand why people don't like it. I do. I'm not irrational. Even though I find it okay, I understand why people didn't like this reveal. But I like it, and I like the storyline because of Randy's cameo, because I like Randy's cameo coming in and talking about if you're suddenly dealing with unexplained backstory and things you didn't know before, you're not dealing with another sequel, you're dealing with the concluding part of a trilogy. And he's like, trilogies always show something that we didn't know before. Godfather, Jedi, all revealed things that we didn't know before. So I think working within that frame of like, we're going to make the concluding part of a trilogy, we're going to make it a bit of a horror comedy, and we're going to make it as a bit of a throwback. Because like, I love the fact that Stab 3 is literally called Return to Woodsboro, to kind of show us that we're going back to the beginning. So I think if you take all of that into account, it makes the movie that much more enjoyable, and it makes the characterization that much more enjoyable, and it makes the scenes a bit more enjoyable. Now, as we talk a bit more about what's revealed, I will also say, and this is going to sound really weird, but it's true, this movie, and in terms of its portrayal of Hollywood and what goes on there, kind of ahead of its time. When we get the reveal of what actually happened to Maureen Prescott, it's like I was saying when we did our Mulholland Drive review, Hollywood has been trying to tell us for years what's going on. and we weren't listening.
That's not intentional, though.
No, it's not.
Whereas in
Especially because
Mulholland
this movie
Drive,
was
you can
produced.
argue it's intentional because at least
Well,
they're
I mean,
making a commentary on.
maybe we don't know. It might have been someone on this thing did not like the fact that Weinstein was producing and went, "Hey, let's write
Well,
this
it's
thing."
funny because he is producing, yeah.
Hmm. So when you think about it, Scream 3 actually a little ahead of its time. Plus, again, the meta commentary is nowhere near as subtle as it is in the first two, but it's still there and it's still fun. Like, I love the little scene where the actors are all sitting around talking about the production on Scream 3, and they have the black actor and he's all like, "I am not a Randy stand-in, I am my own character." And they're like, "Yeah, called Ricky, who works at the video store." And then he goes on about how, serious black actors can't turn down work. And then they talk about talent search to get the new Sydney, and they make comments and stuff there.
I did wonder who he was supposed to be, but I guess he's just a new character, isn't he? Because it's a sequel. But
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so I really like that side of things, and I think that Sydney's arc, as small as it is actually quite good. Now, it's really funny that you mentioned the voiceovers and hating that scene, because I actually love that scene. I love that scene where Sydney goes back to Woodsboro, and I think it's just a great way to show how she's kind of packed her trauma down and hasn't dealt with it. She's just kind of gone into denial. So it's kind of like her having to go back and face it before she can move on with her life. At least, yeah.
Yeah, it's just at this point it seems a bit old hat, that idea, and it just feels like she's already past it anyway. And I can kind of see what they're going for. I think one of the problems is then she's not in this movie as much, so maybe it feels like that plot is like fighting for attention with the other plot, because in a way you could say those plots feel quite separate. I mean, it comes back around to it, and obviously by the end it does become the sort of center of the film. But yeah, I hated all that stuff. I think just leave it alone, do something different. And the thing is also, just the way it was done was cheap, because when she first had like the dream or the vision of her mother, and they sort of turn her into like, I mean,
that
it looks really
crap.
Yeah, it looks really bad. It looks really cheap, like the way they do like the CGI, and yeah, a lot of that stuff I pretty much hated. And I sort of I didn't like the voice thing, because I just feel it should sound like Ghostface. We just want it to sound like Ghostface. That's a Scream thing, and that's fine, because then there's the mystery to it. Because it's like in that opening scene with Cotton Weary, like when he like changes his voice and that, he just sounds like a whiny sort of teenage like boy just shouting at him and just saying teenage boy stuff. So he loses that mystique that the Ghostface voice has. And yeah, that scene is pretty bad, and I sort of hate the fact that they waste Cotton Weary, and I think that's the problem.
There wasn't much else they could do with him, though. I mean, where else would he have gone after Scream 2? That kind of wrapped up his little, I was wrongly accused thing.
Yeah, but then don't have him at the start of this movie like he's going to be a major character. I mean, because first of all, there's question marks over the logic of that. There's question marks over when he's killed, because the way they introduce him is that he's now the hottest talk show host in America, apparently.
You have to like the title of his show, at least. Come on. The 100% Cotton. I thought that was cute.
Yeah, no, that's not bad. That's not bad. I mean, that's probably what they would go with, to be fair. But, but and then they're saying when they find out he's dead, Hollywood mourns him. Well, why? I mean, there's no logic to this. How someone who had zero acting experience, when you go back to the Scream 1 and 2, he's not an actor. He's famous because he was the lead suspect who supposedly killed Sydney's mother. And then he becomes famous because he's released and it's revealed and it's not him. So, okay, if you're going with the satire and believability, I can sort of believe that he might get his own talk show and things like that. But Hollywood mourning him like he's some great actor, come on, that's a stretch. I don't buy it. Would be this
the news
thing
outlets
where
being hyperbolic.
If it's like, yeah, De Niro died or something, but the way they do it, because obviously there's this whole thing where he's rushing to get to his girlfriend, and the problem with that scene is there's no suspense because we know that it's not him, the other side of the door, because they do this whole thing where it's like, well, for some reason, Cotton likes to dress up as Ghostface and play games or something like that. So she's in two minds whether it's him or if it's actually a psychopath. But the problem is we already know it's not Cotton because we know Cotton's rushing to try and save her. So there's kind of no suspense to that scene, and it's just very sort of cheesy and goofy, and I think, for me, a lot of this film doesn't feel enough like a Scream movie because it's like him driving down the highway, rushing down the highway, and it's all very frantic. And again, I'm not quite sure if this comes from the direction or the script or a mix of the two, maybe, but that's what a lot of this film feels like. It feels like an over-the-top action-style movie. And I don't want that from a Scream movie. I want, because even though you go more into the comedy, the satire, which obviously it's been doing from the start, I just feel like on some level it should still be a satisfying sort of horror movie as well. Because in a way, there's no point in going completely into like the goofy comedy territory, because that's what films like Scary Movie basically do, and you don't necessarily want Scream to become just another Scary Movie type film.
I don't think it goes quite as blunt as Scary Movie.
No.
But I don't know. I totally understand like the sentiment that this doesn't feel like a Scream film. It doesn't. And look, I completely agree about the opening scene. I think, like I said before, this is, in my opinion, the weakest opening scene of any Scream movie. Like you said, there's no tension in it. There's like really nothing. You're basically just waiting for these characters to get killed off. The changing voice thing is stupid, but it kind of brings a little bit of horror into that opening scene of like Christine thinking that she's being threatened by Cotton, and then he actually comes home and she thinks he's going to kill her. Like, I don't know, that maybe a little bit, but it's not a great scene. It's not a good opening scene. It's definitely the weakest of all the opening scenes. But pretty much after that, I don't think the movie's as bad as everyone seems to think it is. Like, I know I'm in the minority here, and this, like, if we were doing an unpopular opinions video, this would probably be one of the first ones that I'd say is that I love this movie. I think it's just that I've gotten to the point where, like I said, I watch it less as a Scream film, as more as just a horror comedy. And I think that, like, I do understand what you're saying with regards to let's not go back to Woodsboro. Let's do something new. Let's do something fresh. And I think that if this was just another sequel, that yes, I would agree with that. But because they lean so hard into this is the concluding part of a trilogy, if it really was just going to be those three films, I think going back to the beginning works for that kind of theme, because when you look at trilogy films, they do often do that in the final installment. Like Randy points out, you have to go back to the beginning to learn something that you didn't know the first time around. So because they were obviously leaning into that whole, this is a trilogy thing, things are going to be revealed that are different, we need to go back to the beginning. I think that Sydney going back to Woodsboro and seeing her past and confronting her past, because she didn't really do that in Scream 2. Like in Scream 2, she moved on from Woodsboro, but then the killers came back and it scared her back into hiding. So she never really got the chance to confront what happened at Woodsboro. She just kind of moved on with her life, then went into hiding, whereas this film is bringing her back to make her face. Because, you know, you have that scene where she sees the door with Tatum. You know, she sees the garage door. She sees her old bedroom. She sees her mother's death scene. So she's being forced to confront all of this trauma, which I think then leads into the final scene of the movie where she can leave the door open and not worry about locking her house up all tight because she's finally confronted her past and moved on. So I might be looking too deep into this movie and giving it too much credit, but for me, that's why all of this background stuff works, because they were at this point in time very obviously wanting to make this the concluding chapter in a trilogy, as Randy said, and it wasn't until like 10 years later that we got Scream 4.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably right. I did wonder why there was such a long gap between this and Scream 4, but I had a question on that actually, which is, I wasn't quite sure why, and we're in sort of in spoilers now anyway, but I wasn't quite sure why the Patrick Dempsey character survived, because they definitely make it look like he's gonna die, and then he ends up living, and then obviously he pops up again at the end, and I sort of thought, well, what's the point in having him survive? I mean, really, he's a character. He just could have been a sacrifice. So
That's true.
I wondered if they were keeping him alive for a potential fourth film, and then obviously,
Possibly. Or maybe just to give Sydney a little extra person in her life, maybe to show that she's open to like new people. Because, you know, we spoke about right at the beginning about how she's really only in contact with her dad and Dewey. And, you know, he's kind of, Patrick Dempsey is kind of ish set up as a little bit of a love interest. I mean, it's not a huge thing, but he and Sydney have a couple of moments. So maybe he's just there in the end to show that, you know, she's reconnected with Gail and Dewey, but she's also, again, it could just work into her arc of she's open to having new people in her life and to trusting new people and making new connections. I mean, it could have been there to be open-ended if they wanted to do more sequels, because I think they did try to get him for Scream 4, but I'm not 100% sure, but it could be interpreted as that, or it could be interpreted as maybe they were hoping for more sequels. I don't know. But it is an interesting point, because they really, you're right, they could have killed him off and it would have worked out fine, but maybe he was just there, like I said, to be there for Sydney.
Yeah, it's just because of the way the scene plays. You know, like obviously they make it look like he's going to die and then he doesn't. So it does feel quite dramatic, so it almost feels like they're making a point, whereas in theory they would just kill him or they wouldn't, sort of thing. But anyway, that's just something I wondered. But
well, since we're veering into spoiler territory, should we talk about the killer reveal? Because I sense that we both have a lot to say about the reveal in this one and the way it kind of retcons the first movie a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
All right. So of course we have to have a ghost face reveal. Now we meet earlier in the film Roman, who's the director of Stab 3, and he ends up being revealed to be the killer. But the bigger twist is that he ends up being Sydney's half brother. It turns out Maureen Prescott. So throughout the whole movie, there's pictures of Maureen Prescott being left everywhere, and everything is about like Maureen Prescott and what is this past that she's kept hidden. They find out that she had a couple of missing years when she left Woodsboro and no one knows where she went. Turns out she ended up in Hollywood, and she was essentially gang raped at a Hollywood party, and that sent her packing back to Woodsboro. But as a result of that gang rape, she got pregnant, and that was Roman. She gave the baby up for adoption. Roman found her a few years previously, tried to say, "I'm your son." She apparently rejected him, and that's when we find out that he has started videotaping her, having her various affairs, and that he took the video of her and Billy's dad to Billy, and supposedly gave Billy the idea of revenge. So this is the retcon that no one likes, which I do understand on one level, but we'll get into why I'm okay with it. But let's hear Keith's thoughts, because we can see by his face that he has a lot of negative thoughts about this one.
Well, yeah, it's a hot mess, because when you're just reading out the plot there, and you know, I don't for a minute buy them. They were just making a point about, you know, Hollywood and producers and stuff like that. And so it's almost like, why introduce a Nikki sort of element like gang rape in the first place? because obviously the sort of satire that Scream is sort of different to that anyway. But I think the problem is outside of that is it's just so convoluted. You were just going through all the different things there, and it's just very hard to believe that it all fits together, and it's just an unnecessary retcon. I think we already had the perfect kind of. I mean, even if you want to question that and their motivations, at least in the first movie, it sort of paints that for you, and you sort of have that. And I think you're always on shaky ground if then 3 movies down the line you try and give us a different sort of story. And again, I think, although obviously the second movie, it wasn't someone related to Sid. It's obviously someone where it's a connection, and it's, it was Billy's mum, and it just feels like you're going to a similar well. And the actor, I don't mind. I think he's okay, Scott Foley, but I do find the character and the end of the film really annoying. He's really whiny, and there's no real sort of charisma to him, and he's just annoying because I think when these twists work and when these characters work is when actually there is something interesting about them, there is something charismatic about them. The best villains are the ones that you can humanize on some levels, and you can at least see their point of view, even if you don't agree with them and what they're doing. You can at least see their point of view. And I don't in this. It just feels like a cheap. Well, she's my stepsister. She got all the focus. But to rationale that, and I know he's a psychopath, but I mean, to rationale that, so what? She didn't even know about your existence. I mean, it's not like she can do much about that, and it's not like she asked for all this attention. So it's just a weak villain. It's just a weak motivation, and it's so cliched. The nature of what happens with Sydney in this movie is then you almost get a recap of her first meeting with Ghostface, almost the first sort of fight, because the fact that it's the set, and in a way it's like she's in the fake version of her house sort of thing that they've built. And so in a way I think they're definitely being meta there, because it's almost like they're recapping the original first fight of Sydney and Ghostface. But
another unpopular opinion that I feel if we were in the same room, you'd probably reach out and smack me for. So I'm very glad that we're doing this over Skype. But Roman is actually my second favorite Ghostface. I know, okay. I know. We're no longer friends anymore, are we? I've lost my horror club membership.
Well, I don't mind the actor. The actor's been in quite a bit, and I think he's a pretty good actor. I think it's more this and the way the character's written and stuff.
When we get to Scream 4, I'll explain why he ranks over the Scream 4 ones, who, okay. Yeah, there's a whole thing there. But we spoke about in the second one how I was always underwhelmed by Mrs. Loomis and Mickey, and I could never quite put my finger on it. So obviously Billy and Stu, always my OG favorite ghost faces, but there's something about Roman. First of all, we have to give him credit for, he's the only ghost face who works alone. So, props to him, man. He's the only solo ghost face who manages to do everything on his own. Secondly, I'm probably giving the film too much credit here, but I do think that they were trying to make at least some sort of commentary about what goes on in Hollywood, because there are a few references earlier in the film about cast members having to sleep with directors for parts. Angelina reveals that she slept with Milton to get the part. So them revealing what happened to Maureen, I admit, gang rape, very intense thing to bring into the Scream films. They could have just left it at one attack. They didn't have to make it so in your face. But I do feel like they had those references to actresses sleeping for parts so that they could then reveal that Maureen was raped, to show that You know, when you have actresses sleeping for parts, it is almost always under duress. And again, I do find it ironic that this film was produced by Weinstein and has this storyline in it, because, like I said, Hollywood has actually been trying to tell us for years about the Weinsteins, and we just weren't listening. So I think that reveal about Maureen works within the theme of this movie, and the fact that this movie is so focused on Hollywood and all the mechanisms that go down in Hollywood. There's so much commentary on what happens in that industry and what happens to the actors in that industry. I mean, it's not the most subtle commentary because, like I said, Kevin Williamson did not write this script, so it's missing his finesse. But it does have a lot of that. So I don't mind that storyline because I think it works within the big theme of setting this movie in Hollywood and making these comments on what happens there. Now, as far as the retcon with him being the one who inspired Billy, on the one hand, I totally get why fans hate it. I kind of a little bit hate it because it does really kind of undermine Billy and Stu as Ghostface and undermines that whole first movie to suggest that there was someone else behind the scenes. But again, if we look at it within the context of this film and the context of Randy saying a trilogy is always going to take you back to the beginning, I thought it was kind of a fun way to tie everything into like this one big bow and to show that everything was kind of started here in Hollywood with what happened to Maureen. And so it kind of has to end here in Hollywood. My biggest complaint about the Roman reveal was that he doesn't have any scenes with Sydney. So while we're getting the reveal that it's Roman and like we know who Roman is, the audience, Sydney just must be going, who the fuck are you? Like, he takes off the mask. And, like,
I'd forgotten.
So now,
is he the director or the producer?
He's the director. So Milton is the producer, the older dude. So he's the director. Now, you mentioned Emily Mortimer and how she has a scene with Sydney earlier in the film. That's because she was originally going to be the second killer. So they gave her that scene with Sydney so that when she was revealed as the killer, then Sydney would know her. So all they needed to do when they realized that they were going to just go with Roman is just film a quick scene with him and Sydney. Like, she could have wandered onto the set and he could be like, oh my God, Sydney Prescott, you know, I'm making the movie about your life. Like, we just needed one scene with him and Sydney so that when he took the mask off, because he takes the mask off and she's just like, you know, like, who are you?
Yeah, she's never seen him before.
No, and so I don't think it works on that level. Like, we just needed one scene. But them being siblings, you know what? I've watched Halloween. We're used to random siblings coming out of nowhere, random half sisters, half brothers. This one didn't bother me that much because, like I said, if you look at it within what this film is doing and how this film is supposed to be the concluding part of a trilogy, going back to the beginning, going back to the roots, tying everything together, then I think that within that, it does work. But I do understand why it pisses people off. I really do, because it does piss me off a bit as well. It's like, you're taking the credit away from Billy and Stu. They're such great ghost face killers. Like, why would you mess with that? But if this had been the concluding part of the Scream trilogy, if this is all we had gotten, I actually would have been okay. I actually think it's not the worst ending. I think the kills are pretty lame, but again, we can blame the post-Columbine era, and it definitely is scary.
It's not really funny, and I do wonder how much humour they were actually going for. I'm not that convinced that. Obviously, I can definitely see there are definitely scenes that are played for laughs, but the gags themselves aren't that good. And obviously, you know, the first two Scream movies, there are really funny gags and really funny like references, and because they even get lazy on the pop culture references here, where they're just slinging in random stuff, and it's just. I mean, the gag about, you know, because with the Jenny McCarthy character, like getting the Hitchcock movie wrong, and I
thought that was kind of funny.
Well, it was okay, but my point with her character is they don't really know what she wants to be, because on the one hand they're portraying her as this typical like airhead type thing, because that's the whole thing with her getting the wrong Hitchcock movie, but then on the other hand she's complaining about her part and how meaty it is, and well, she's an airhead, so I mean, why does she care? I mean, it's just and she's moaning because she wants to get back to like some sort of MTV style show, but I don't know. It just seems inconsistent that they don't really. It doesn't feel like the same character who would, on the one hand, be. Because in a way, it feels like a legitimate acting complaint that an actor might make about, "Oh, this is a shitty part. I want more of a part than this." But then, if you're then portraying her as just an airhead, then that doesn't really quite mesh with that other side. Um, and there's so much about this which is just so sloppy and lazy. And I mean, there's this whole thing, isn't there, when I think it must be Roman or someone involved on the film thinks that he's going to be the. Although, why would he if he's the killer? I mean, maybe he's just someone on. I think it's Roman thinks he's going to be killed or something, like he's the next target, and how he comes to that is because Jenny McCarthy, Sarah, took off the head of the statue. And obviously he doesn't know that, but that is such a ridiculous.
Well, that's obviously him being like purposely misdirecting because, you know, he's the killer. So he knows that he's not next.
But that's... yeah.
See, I never saw... I always saw Jenny...
Scene, it seems like it's really...
But again, it is supposed to be kind of stupid. I think Jenny McCarthy's character, I always got the impression that she wasn't complaining so much that the character wasn't meaty, but more that, like, she complains that she has to die naked, which I completely understand. She doesn't want to do nudity.
Oh, yeah,
and she claims that she's a 35-year-old playing a 21-year-old and that she, you know... and then she complains about, like, the script things. Like, I do understand what you're saying in the contradictions in her character, but, I mean, you can be an airhead and still want a better role than a 21-year-old who dies in the shower. So... kind of, I don't think any of the new characters were that great, except for Parker Posey.
Yeah,
so I do get what you're saying. Like, they were very shallow characters.
Well, that does bring me on to another point, actually, because, like, yeah, certain things I think Emily Mortimer should have had a bigger part, should have done. See, it's just frustrating because the cast is really strong, and yet most of them they don't really do anything with. But I just thought also Randy's sister, what a way she could have had a much bigger...
Heather Matarazzo is a fun actress, like and they really could have used her a bit more. No, I agree. Her cameo was like, that's all you're going to do with her? You're going to bring her in for 5 minutes and then she's going to disappear? Like, that's a bit of a waste. Because
that would almost make sense. Then Randy's out of the picture and now you have a sister, his sister... and she's going to have a bigger role. She's going to take over from Randy in the film. I mean, maybe make her a bit different to him, but then she could carry that on. So that makes no sense. And I think just examples of the sloppy plotting is that Sydney only comes back to the house because she has Randy's sister with her and because she has a videotape. And if you're just applying logic to this, I know the logic within the Scream films is just because Randy knows his shit when it comes to horror movies. But if you just use him like real logic, it actually doesn't help the characters anymore than anything else. It's just him running through random rules. It actually doesn't make them better prepared to deal with Ghostface. It's just a meta scene because it's a Scream movie and it's just a gag. I mean, I quite enjoy that scene. It's an all right scene, but you don't actually need it in the movie. Now, I guess if they'd given the sister more of a role, then maybe I would have forgiven it a bit more. But it you know, because I've heard other people joking, you've got Dewey making notes and stuff, and it's like, but it doesn't actually prepare them any. It's just like a fun Randy, just a way to work Randy into the movie. You don't actually need it in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a point, but when you think about it, this is like his rule scene, right? So this is his, you know, rules of a trilogy, rules of a sequel, etc. When you think about the scenes in like the previous two movies where he tells the rules, kind of the same setup. The rules don't really help anyone. They just kind of lay down like what's going to happen in the movie. Like maybe it's more jarring in this movie because there's so much more that you don't like about it. But I mean, in the second movie, when he and Dewey have that like scene in the cafeteria that we really like, I mean, they talk about, the rules of the sequel, but then we talk about how the sequel actually breaks those rules anyway. So, I mean, this scene is not really any different to those two scenes. It's Randy coming in to explain the meta rules of the movie that they're in, which is what he does in all three movies. So, it kind of...
I think when they did find some sort of a role for him, it's just, I think it's just to have the Scream type moment with Randy, but obviously it's a missed opportunity.
I thought it was a fun way to bring Randy in, because after Scream 2, everyone was clamoring for Randy to come back. And I think one of the ideas that was floated was that they were actually going to bring him back and say that, like, his parents whisked him away to some, like, Swedish hospital or something, and he's been, like, living in the Alps, and then they went, no, that's too far-fetched. Let's just have him make a video. Plus, you got to love the back and forth between him on the video and Dewey after he says that he lost his virginity to Karen Kolchak at the video store. That creepy Karen, shut up! Like, I love that bit. But yeah, I love that they managed to get Randy in, and like I said, his rules for the trilogy actually helped me kind of appreciate the movie a bit more as a trilogy. So I really like that scene. But Matarazzo was it. Yeah.
Yeah. Another question is who the hell is Paul? Is it meant to be his college roommate or something?
I'm going to assume so. Yeah.
In the background, Paul shouting.
I think it's just to show that he's definitely filming it on campus, and that he's been interrupted. So
I didn't know if he had a brother or something, but they never mentioned a brother, so I'm assuming it's a roommate. Yeah.
Because if you look at his shirt does match like one of the scenes in Scream 2, so you can actually line it up to see when exactly he filmed it.
And he has still got the necklace that Derek gave
I wanted to mention that. I thought that was gorgeous. I mean, Derek's a block of wood, but he was in love with her, so...
I mean, I'm not sure if she would want that, really, but obviously she did, as a way to remember him.
I'm guessing it's like a talisman of some sort, she just took it as like an extra... Because, he supposedly gave them to her to show that he loves her and to protect her and stuff. So maybe, because she's not wearing it at the beginning of the film. So maybe she just wore it as like extra luck, a little bit of extra protection to kind of help herself be brave enough to go back and face her past. But I actually liked that little bit of continuity.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. That's fine. So another character I didn't like, I thought was boring, was the Patrick Dempsey character.
He's a bit blah, but I mean...
It's like he should stick to playing doctors, really, but it's... he just wasn't very interesting. He was just very bland, and again, I didn't buy the whole thing about him letting Gail on the investigation, and...
I guess he went to Gail because he knew that she was in LA, and he wanted someone who had been there at Woodsboro, and I mean, she does... she is able to tell him that the photo is of Maureen Prescott. And I mean, the cops do this. I don't know if this is a thing in real life, but you do see in like TV shows and stuff, they'll work with, like, for example, just off the top of my head, Criminal Minds. All right. They always go to like different towns to investigate. And there's always like a local who will come in and like help them like figure out what's going on where. So I guess like you have to stretch a little bit of believability. But I'm guessing that it's kind of like she points out to Dewey when she's all like, oh, I did write the definitive book on the Woodsboro murders. And he's like, yeah, and I bet you can't wait to write another one. But, like, I think Gail, it was kind of probably just a bit more of an opportunity, like Cotton died. They have a reference to Sydney, and he probably thought, hey, Gail Weathers is actually in town. Maybe I can go and get some information from her. And he does make it very clear to her, if I see one word of this published, I will lock you up, So I guess, stretch a little bit of believability and kind of like she's like the expert on like Woodsboro.
I mean, I think one of the things with him is that they're sort of setting him up potentially as a red herring a little bit.
Yeah,
probably,
just a little bit. Yeah,
he's just not a very interesting character.
I agree. Dempsey, I think Patrick Dempsey has like charisma, and probably because I watch Grey's Anatomy and I know him as a guy.
He's fine.
I like him a bit more. But like, you're right, his character doesn't really do much. He's kind of, I mean, he's more interesting than Derek, say, but he's mostly there for exposition and to kind of like come in when like a new plot point happens to kind of move it into the next scene. He doesn't really do much.
Because also he's just a useless cop, and I hate seeing that on screen, because if it's a character, you're meant to be like, okay, he's a decent sized. Because at one point, Sydney just slips away from him, like she just leaves the cop. And that's really, I mean, wasn't he keeping an eye on her, sort of thing? And then he just gets his ass handed to him so easily by Ghostface. And it's like, because I think that's the problem now as we get further into the sequels, is we said it all along in the first review, then it's a different sort of killer, Ghostface. He's not a massive monster like some of the others. He doesn't maybe have supernatural strength. There's nothing like that. He's a different sort of killer, and at the end of the day, it is just sort of a regular guy in a mask and a cloak, and the way he gets to his preys are in a different way. So I think if you're again getting down to a basic fight, that this cop should be doing better. This cop shouldn't be like being taken out so easily by this Ghostface. So he's a bit of a shitty cop. When he blew himself up, that guy. It's another actor I've seen in stuff. I can't figure out what, but he's like the fake Dewey, and sort of weird because he's blonde, but it's sort of. He's got the moustache at least, which is funny. But you're gonna have to explain that scene to me. Is it because he's trying to read a clue and then the lighter just slips out of his hand, or how does he?
So the whole point of that scene is that, and I don't know how this is one of those, like, let's stretch disbelief a little bit, is the killer's turned on the gas in the house and then cut the electricity so that he has to use the lighter to read the page. So once he lights the lighter, the gas explodes and boom, he's gone. But again, it has to be this willing suspension of disbelief, because it's like, first of all, I'm pretty sure you can smell gas. All right. So I don't know why no one smelt that, like, the gas was filling up the house. And secondly, the killer would have to know that they would have a lighter. Like, this guy smokes, so maybe he knew that. But it's like Parker Poser's character, she had like a little flashlight. Like, what if they just stood around and used the flashlight? Like, the killer absolutely had to know that they would use the lighter in order for that gag to work. Now, I think it's just a fun scene because I love Dewey and Gale rolling down the hill and like Parker Posey punching Gale in the face and Gale punching her back. That's fun. But no, that definitely is a kill that it's like, okay, like, we're stretching the realms of like possibility, but because this film is so heightened in its reality, it doesn't, at least for me, I don't find it as jarring as, say, like the teleportation in number 2, because number 2 is trying to be a bit more grounded. So I'm like, well, I don't know how this dude's teleporting all over the place. Whereas number 3 is a slightly heightened reality. So I'm like, okay, it's a heightened reality. It's a little bit more silly. So I can kind of stretch my willing suspension of disbelief a little bit further for this one.
Also, I have another question about that scene, because it's on the set, isn't it? So that's part of the set.
No, that's set at Parker Posey's character. That's her house. They're having like a rap party after the movie is cancelled. So no, it's not the set. That's up in the Hollywood Hills.
Because could you see what my point was going to be?
That they wreck the set and then we see it like 2 seconds later. No,
it wasn't that. I thought it was part of the set. So my point was, then if it's just a prop for the set, then it wouldn't be a real like cooker anyway. So you wouldn't be able to. It would just be fake. So you wouldn't be able. Oh, it's a real house. No, that was my point. Okay, that's fair.
Okay, so do you want to go first, or should I go first with ratings? Because this could be interesting.
I'll go first, because I think in a way your score will be more interesting, I think, in some ways.
Okay.
Well, I'll give it the perfect score, really, because it's Scream 3, so I'm giving it a 3.
Not gonna give that so low!
And a lot of people would agree with me. I mean, 4 is as high as I would go, because I don't like the ending. I mean, they do some sort of romantic comedy style ending, and I sort of feel this isn't this. And I think they're definitely trying to set the Dempsey character up as their future boyfriend. Because I just why is he at their house? Why are they hanging around at this house? I guess they're just getting together on a ranch. But
Yeah,
anyway,
gonna watch a
just-
movie, you know.
But no, I think it's a three. I don't. Apart from Parker Posey, I do enjoy the stuff with her and Gail. I think those are the funniest moments. I just think it's so lazy and so boring to watch, and I hate the twist. I hate the motivation, and the characters are just mostly bland, and or they're just not given enough time to be anything else. I didn't find the comedy that entertaining. There was very few times I laughed. It was really lame.
Wow. I have to say, I really thought you'd go a little higher. I didn't think you'd go into like 3 out of 10. That's so low. I thought just the fact that it was a Scream film would elevate it a little bit more. But okay, all right, 3 out of 10. Sure. Well, I am going much higher. I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. Yeah, I know. Look, I love this film. I really do. I think it's fun. I think it's funny. I think that I like that Gail gets to be in the spotlight a little bit more. Like I said, I give it a little bit more credit in that I do actually think it was a bit ahead of its time in its portrayal of Hollywood and telling us what went on there. I don't mind the reveal. Roman is my second favorite Ghostface killer. I like Sydney's arc in it. There are some lines that I just absolutely love.
No, hang on though. You say he's your second favourite.
Well,
now
I count Billy and Stu as like one.
Oh yeah, no, it wasn't that. I was gonna say we both really enjoyed Laurie Metcalf, so I would say she's better than Roman.
Yeah, look, I like Laurie Metcalf as an actress. I think she elevates that role, but I don't love Mrs. Loomis as a reveal or as a killer either. So, and I don't like Mickey. So, no, Roman is number two for me. No. So, and I have a lot of fun whenever I watch Scream 3. Yeah. Like, a lot. I love the random Jay and Silent Bob cameo. Like, I don't know what happened there. Were they just hanging around the set one day and someone's like, hey, come be in our movie? It's random, but it's kind of funny.
So I think, and this is just a point of what you just, and it might be why I don't like a lot of like modern horror movies, because it's almost like they take the celebrity tie-ins to the extreme, and it's almost like they're just throw someone in because they're relevant at this point. And I think like with this, okay, it's still being meta, but it just feels like it's being meta in a lazy way that sort of portrays what the Scream movies were doing originally. It's almost like we'll just name random movies rather than horror movies. We'll just have random celebrities because that's just part of the gag. And it's just not enough. I mean, it's not really that exciting or cutting edge or funny, and it just feels like such basic. Anyone who reads like gossip magazines or stuff. And I think it's part of like some of this, although it's a different sort of film, but it's what bothers me a bit about, you know, like the recent Halloween movies, especially Halloween Kills, where I think it's just so much sort of fan service or so much sort of just things crowbarred in, rather than actually just coming up with an original sort of plot, or just because it's like the whole thing with it having to be tied back to Sydney's mother rather than them just moving forward.
Yeah, no, I get that. And like I said, I think if this was just another sequel, I'd be on board with that. But like I said, because it ties into that whole Randy, this is the concluding part of a trilogy, and if we were looking as if they really did want to close the movies out, I'm like, well, you know, at the end, you always do have to kind of go back to the beginning and figure it out from there. And I don't know, it works.
I mean, obviously,
in terms of that.
Yeah, Okay, that's
So
sort of
7
fair.
out
I
of 10 for
mean, I
me,
didn't
which is
really.
probably a little generous. Like if I was
That's,
going off
yeah, it's a
like an
little bit
actual
higher.
technical level, I might go lower. But because I just enjoy this film so much, I really do. I have so much fun watching it. Then it gets a 7 out of 10 for me. Like nowhere near as good as the first film, but I enjoy this one more than number 2, which I know is an unpopular opinion. But I do. I would actually, yeah, I'd rank this above number 2. We do Scream 4 because I haven't watched Scream 4 in
That
a
will
while.
be
So
interesting.
yeah, that will be interesting to see if I do enjoy it more. But off like the original 3, yeah, this one, yeah, is I prefer
Okay.
this one to number 2. So
Yeah, I'll
now that
see
Keith
when
is
we do
reconsidering
it.
our friendship until the next one, we'll see where things go. I knew we were going to
Well,
have beef with this one though.
yeah. Well, the question is, will I give Scream 4 a 4 just to be consistent? I'll just slowly back up the numbers, so maybe 5 will be a 5.
We'll have to wait and see.
We'll see how it goes. So I think when I first saw Scream 4, I did give it a 4, but then I might have reevaluated it. So yeah. So that'll be coming soon. I mean, that'll probably be coming in the new year sometime, and we might do some other stuff before that. But it gets a bad rap, and it's actually not a bad sequel like Rachel thinks. Or do you agree with me? Then it's a big fat turkey. Let us know which side you fall on in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Share us out on social media. You can also support me on Patreon. So that's bored now. No, I've got it the wrong way around. Patreon.com/bored now. You can support me for as little as $1 a month, or £1 a month if you're UK. But yeah, I do commentaries on there. I do sort of reviews of TV pilots and just different things I'm going to be doing. So that's started this week. So you've got a couple of things up there if you want to support the channel financially. And another thing, actually, I did set a poll for our next horror franchise, our next sort of biggish one, if you like. And there's 4 options. So, I mean, if you just go on the channel and you go to like the community section, the poll's there. I might put it in the description if I remember. But the 4 options, if I can remember rightly, were Final Destination franchise, Wrong
Let me see if I can
Turn,
pull it up.
yeah, Wrong Turn, Urban Legend, so sort of sticking very sort of 90s, early 2000s here, and
And
Hellraiser.
Hellraiser.
Yeah, those are the 4 options. So you can go. I mean, it basically looks at the moment like it will be Wrong Turn because that's
Yeah, Wrong
winning
Turn is winning.
quite easily. So at the moment it's Wrong Turn, but you can still change that, of course. I think there's a couple votes for Hellraiser. There might be a vote for another one. I don't think Urban Legend has any votes. So at the moment that's not going to be a win. But whichever we do, I think it'll be a fun sort of ride. Especially, I mean, Final Destination, I know, is one you mentioned doing those. I think they would make for fun reviews, definitely. So, but yeah, you can change that. There is a poll on the community. So,
Guys, Rachel McDonald, video essays covering TV shows and movies. So follow me over there, and my Tumblr and my Twitter are also available on my channel. So just follow me everywhere, and I will, of course, keep joining Keith on the odd occasion to do a horror review. So you can find me on his channel as well. So follow both of us. Lots of content.
okay, thanks, guys, and we will be back with more Scream soon and more horror soon. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Goodbye.